Long ago, the earth was young, wild and untamed. Huge mountains soared into the clouds and came tumbling down. Winds raced around the world and tied themselves up into knots. Cruelty and kindness were toddlers taunting each other. Love had not yet met lust. And tenderness was terrified of this tumultuous world, and she went and she hid in a cave, and there she met fear. And human beings of this first stage were bold but directionless. We hadn't really found that thing that made us human yet. And us and the whole world was tended to by very young gods who wanted a wonderful world, but weren't exactly sure how to get one. The gods gathered together and counseled and debated, trying to figure out what to do to secure their realm and their rule. And much was debated and much was counseled and argued, and not a lot really came out of anything. And it went on and on and on and on, so long that one goddess became very bored and walked away from the committee. And she sat by a river through which flowed the sands of time. And she took a branch or a stick, and she was sort of weaving it through the sands, and she drew a line. And then she drew like a squiggle, and she drew some more squiggles, and she created a word. The written word. And with this new power came a new hope for the gods. The young gods combined all of their power and strength, and they created 2 books. The first book was indestructible, and the second, with magic failing, was not. But they created an idea to save all that they governed and cared so much about. So in this first book, this indestructible book, they put everything good and great and grand, everything joyous and loving and happy. And they wrote these words down in the book where it would be bound and saved forever. And they called this wonderful book of wonderful things the Book of Virtue. And then they took the second book, and so wisely they thought, they filled that book with everything bad on the earth, everything cruel and unkind. And then they went further, and they added in everything that would ever be bad in the earth. And then they went even further and added everything they thought someone might be able to possibly sort of think about. And they put that in the book, securing everything bad that could ever, would ever, and might ever happen. And they called this book the Book of Vile. And it was in their supreme wisdom that they would destroy the Book of Vile and thereby destroy anything that could ever bad happen on earth. It was a wonderful idea. But then came the problem of, hey, who gets to destroy the book? Who gets to end everything bad ever? And so they fought some more and they counseled some more. And then there came to be known the second age of the book. And during this second age, nothing really happened. Nothing really good or bad, for everything was tied up in the book. Children were born without happiness, really, and things died without tears. Mountains sort of settled and sank, and the winds just sort of quietly whispered, going nowhere at all. But back in the cave, fear and tenderness were hidden, so they weren't put in either of the books. And there, they giggled in the dark, and they shared their secrets. Well, finally, after much fighting and feuding and campaigning, the gods decided that they would all together at the same time destroy the Book of Vile, therefore share its glory amongst all. So, they all got together, and with hammer and sickle and shield and power and zapping and zooge and magics I can't even explain, the Book of Vile was destroyed. And so the gods partied. They got together, they got musicians, they got dancers, they got down, they got a feast. It was amazing. And they didn't really worry too much about the earth because, hey, they destroyed everything vile. Awesome! And they had a loud, raucous feast which lasted a really, really, really long time. And this was the third age of the book. And it was terrible. For what the gods didn't realize was when they destroyed the book, They didn't destroy all that was vile. They released it onto the earth. Everything that could and would and might ever happen bad flooded the earth at the same time. The mountains collided and shook and screamed and threw ash into the air. Plains of frozen tundra became ice and ripped and gripped. The winds tore through apathy and left anger and antipathy in its wake. Men died from blood-curdling pride and vice, and women screamed as their children ran into the arms of hatred. Fear was pulled from the cave, and pulled and used and discarded and made so huge he grew disproportionately large and crushed tenderness in his arms. Seeing what he had done, he cried, "No! Someone help me!" A cry that was so loud and so sincere that it broke through the musicians and the noise of the party. And the gods, for the first time in an age, listened to the earth, and they heard weeping. Well, of course, they rushed down to try to fight all these demons and all of this vile, but there was just too much of it. They couldn't do everything all by themselves. They needed some kind of help, some sort of plan, but it was just so much, and the world was on the brink of oblivion and chaos. And one god ran up into the halls, and he found the book of virtue, and he tried to break it or rip it or destroy it to release all that was good, but he couldn't. And at that moment, around the corner, two demons approached him. It was venom and brutality, and they were smiling, ready to feast on a god. When he picked the book up and he threw it at them, and it fell to the ground, and the book opened. And there was a word, and he said the word aloud. He read, "Honor," and light shined. It glowed out from the book, and it surrounded him, and like a great veil of smoke pushed the demons away. And then the light faded and went back into the book. So he ran down to the earth and started yelling all of these wonderful words of virtue to try to keep the monsters at bay. But there was only one book, and there were only so many gods. So they taught these words to the humans, so they might keep vile at bay. But the second age of nothing was too long. The third age too terrible, that we didn't know what the words meant. We had no frame of reference, no comprehension to couch them in. So frustrated, one of the gods grabbed a woman, and he sat her down, and he told her a story about dark times where oppressing foes came, and a woman stood up and fought back, and she understood courage. Yeah, she got it. And so they sat down a young man, and they told him a story about dark, oppressive times where someone dared to dream of a better tomorrow. Hope. He understood hope. And so they gathered up all these men and women, and they taught them stories to teach them what these words meant. Stories of lovers to teach love, but duty and honor, and of heroes to teach things heroic. And the people understood and learned, and they armed these men and women with these stories. Yes, the first storytellers were an army. And they went to all of the other humans, and they told these stories. And with everyone's combined effort, they kept the monsters of Vile at bay. Never destroyed, but at bay. Even fear quelled, and to this day holds tenderness in his arms. And so to this day, we tell stories, some of the very same stories, so we can keep the vile at bay. Because it's in our own hands to tell the stories, so we can believe in them, and we can make the world a better tomorrow. This is my sacred trust.